Okay, we're here. New setting. Hope you like it. Needed to get around to recording another video. Just to recap, the reason I do these videos, or at least one of the main reasons I do these videos, is that it's important for me to get this stuff out of my head. And when I'm able to discuss it, to feel like I'm talking to somebody, and I know some of you do watch my videos and I get some really good feedback, so thank you for that. Then I'm able to kind of figure things out when you get stuff out of your head, not to go on a crazy tangent of free speech, but this is the reason why it's very important for us to be able to express ourselves, because expressing ourselves is one of the ways in which we think. My mentor and business partner, John Paul Mendoza, he says that there's fundamentally two kinds of people who talk to think and people who think to talk. And he's definitely an extreme example of somebody who talks to think. And I'm not as extreme as he is, but I do have a lot of that in me. So it's very important for me to get the stuff out, and then I can kind of start figuring it out. So anyways, today we're going to talk about some problem-solving stuff that I'm thinking about. So I'm calling it this and that, with the emphasis and that. And we're going to talk about problem solving on not only multiple variables, but as I titled in the video, interdependent variables, right? And we're going to talk about what that is. So anyways, so here we are. Let's do some problem solving. So if you ever trying to troubleshoot something, if you're trying to figure out how to solve something, there's something wrong. And of course, there's always something wrong in the world. The question is never, why are things wrong, but why are they ever right? That's really the question. So we're always fixing things. We're always arranging things. If you have any kind of place where that you like to get fixed, it always gets disorganized, and you have to actually inject energy for it to come back to being in order, right? That's the second law of thermodynamics, entropy. Everything tends towards disorder. Everything tends towards breaking down unless we inject energy to keep up with it, right? So we're always fixing the problems, and the question is, well, when you're looking at a situation, let's say you're looking at your business or at a business, or you're looking at a marketing campaign, which is maybe smaller, or you're looking at a friendship or a partnership or a potential JV, a joint venture that you might do, or you're looking at a deal that's not working out, or God forbid, you're looking at a relationship, and those are the hardest problems to solve, and we'll talk about why that is. It's always like, what is the problem? Okay? And when we say that, the fact that we say, what is the problem, is one of the first kind of fallacies, because when we say what is the problem, we're thinking, okay, what is the problem A, is the problem B, or is the problem C? And that is, or whatever other variable, right? And that is, if we could, in whatever instance, really separate that entity and say, this is one entity, right? And there's nothing else around it. And that's very difficult to do. So when we say, we should say something like, what are the problems, right? What are all the different things that are happening, right? And so anyway, so when we think about multiple variables, we might think of A, we might think of B, C, D. So I said 5 variables here, not to make it too hard. Of course, in life, and when we say, for example, our relationship, God forbid, that those are innumerable variables, and hopefully in business less so, but it's all the same, right? It's all, you're trying to figure out, okay, what do I do to bring this to order? What do I do to bring this out of some kind of bad state to a better state? Okay, so there's something that I was reading about that I thought was very interesting, called non-transitive, okay? When something is non-transitive, it means that it's non-linear. And when something is transitive, it means that it's linear. So let's say something that's linear, for example, is if I say something like B is greater than A and C is greater than B, okay? Therefore, C is greater than A, right? Because it's linear, right? And we tend to treat a lot of problems like that, okay? So if we replace one of these variables, and I have a couple of things, I just realized I'm not gonna get through this, no way. If we replace one of these variables with something like age, or weight, or money, or a number, anything quantitative, then it feels like, well, if it's not linear, then what is it, okay? And the concept that I wanted to talk about, being transitive, or non-transitive rather, is the concept I want to introduce. Because what's happening here is, if you were to replace that for any of the values that I said, any of the types of variables you can have, right? So like, let's say campaign A, it didn't make as much money as campaign B. Therefore, campaign B is better, okay? Then you can eliminate A, you solve your problem. However, many times, to stick something as complicated as a campaign inside of a variable, a campaign has a myriad of variables. And there is the fallacy, because many times what happens is that you have somebody that says, look, I did this program, I did this thing, and it gave me really good results. Therefore, I can inject these variables into your business and everything is going to be dandy. Well, that's not how it is, because inside of this, there's like a myriad of things. So you got to go down to the level of analysis that is pertinent. Now, before you get completely lost, because I'm making everything maybe, perhaps, a lot more complicated than it is, just follow me on this train of thought only. If you were to replace A, B, or C, let's just deal with these three. And as a matter of fact, as you guys can tell, I started with three, then I realized I wanted a few more to make a couple of points. But if I have A, B, and C, and I replace it instead of with money, or the amount something costs, or the amount, or the importance of something, or the budget, or I'm trying to think of more quantitative examples. Like I said, maybe somebody's height, somebody's net worth, somebody's importance in an organization, right? It's linear. Right? But if you were to replace A, B, and C with something like this, you might say, well, I've never heard of this non-transitive. But you have. If you were to replace this for rock, paper, scissors, now we got a problem, right? So let's say rock, paper, scissors, right? So rock does not beat paper, but scissors beats paper. But scissors doesn't beat rock. Rocks beat the scissors. So you see what I'm saying? So it's non-transitive, right? It's not linear. One variable, if you pick one and then you pick another, it's a different result than if you pick the other and the second one, right? Because of how it works, okay? So the way that things are, instead of linear like this, right? What really happens is something like this. So I put the dots here, A, B, C, D, and E. So A affects B, but A also affects C. And then A affects D, and A also affects E. And then vice versa for all of them, all right? So like this. And like this, right? So in 5 variables, there's 5 different things. That means there's 25 possible combinations. I'm not going to take the time to make 25 lines here, but you get the idea, right? So this is what it is. So the problem with trying to figure out the problem is that there are a myriad of problems. And not only that, they influence each other because they're not independent, okay? We cannot isolate something. We cannot confuse a relationship with a washing machine. Right? A washing machine is complicated, but you can isolate the electrical circuits and then diagnose just those and nothing else. And if they all work, then it must be somewhere else. It must be in the software. It must be in the hardware. It must be in the hydraulics. It must be, I don't know if washing machines have hydraulics. I'm just saying. I'm thinking that maybe they do. So that's how you do it, okay? So I'm going to show one more. Probably not going to take too long, but so if the problems were the dominoes falling, right? So when dominoes fall, right, when they fall, then these are dominoes, by the way. Then this is the problem, right? And so we might say something like, okay, so which domino fell first? Was it this one? Was it this one? Was it this one? And then whatever domino fell, that is the problem, right? Well, actually, that's not it. We mustn't confuse catalysts with causes. Okay, so a catalyst is something that triggers the event, right? The cause is actually the series, many times, most of the time, the series, the several circumstances, all the factors that have to be present for this to happen. So if a truck were to go by a bridge that was weak, and then bridge would fall, you can't say, well, it was the truck's fault. Well, no, it was a deficient bridge. It just, that truck happened to go for last. But maybe some cars made it through that weren't as heavy. But you see what I'm saying? So a catalyst is not the same thing, because a catalyst just triggers what was already there. So we could say in the case of the dominoes, the problem is whoever decided to stand up the dominoes thinking that that was a stable configuration. It's not, right? Because if you tip one, then they all go. But this is very hard for us to do, because we want the problem. We want to know what is the problem. We want to know what is the thing that I can remove, and then everything will be great, right? But there's no way to do that, because again, each variable in this analogy, it's probably not a good analogy for this, but in this analogy, all the dominoes are interrelated. And then they affect, the values affect each other. So when we were talking about, A, B, C, and D, so if you're talking about, an equation, something like, for example, this one, if you guys know this one, y equals xb plus 2, or whatever, right? I think that's a slope equation, right? Sure, the value of y somewhat affects x, but not really. What it affects is, it affects the total. It affects the whole equation. But the value of y is still y, right? So y is completely independent in itself, right? It's like it has a wall, and that's it. But what we're talking about is that each of these variables, a of xb and a of xc and a of xd and a of xe, okay. Now let's go to a little more of the application side of it. Okay, so I was going to talk about consulting companies. So there are a few consulting companies out there, and you guys know I'm a consultant, so this could be a long tangent, and I don't want to go in it. But anyways, so my book is about to come out, and we did a revision. We did the new and improved, or the modern book. That's a better way of thinking about it. We just basically finished the modern version of positioning, right? And we just wrote the modern book on positioning, okay? And one of the concepts in positioning is that you have to sort of lay out the landscape, okay? So as a consultant, I have to know what the landscape is. So here's the hypothetical landscape, and one of the top guys, probably the top guy, is McKinsey, okay? So I'm gonna write here. Okay, McKinsey, they're the top guys. And then below McKinsey, you would have something like Bain or BCG, I think. CG, Bain, Deloitte. Okay, so those are the guys. And so I was reading this guy right here, the McKinsey Way. Thanks, David, by the way. And also McKinsey Mind. These are good. Let me just leave them here. It's fine. I was reading also BCG's consulting group on strategy. This is a really heavy, really great book too. So anyways, so I was looking at that, and one of the concepts that McKinsey puts forth, I think they call it, I don't know if they call it MECE or MECE or so, MECE, okay? And what they stand for? Let's see, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. In other words, what are all the different pieces that are mutually exclusive, independent, that are collectively exhaustive, that describe the whole business, okay? Now, this is a very kind of a cool way of thinking about this. So So I'm not knocking on McKinsey. However, my challenge would be, what factors, show me a factor that is actually independent, that is literally mutually exclusive in a business. And I can find that a level of analysis is not. Now, it's not my job to get more complicated than it needs to be. No, but in the application of it, I'll give you a quick example. One of the things that is not mutually exclusive and collectively exhausted is the politics in a corporation. That's what really takes place. I mean, we can get all academic about this, and just like in a relationship, it seems like in a healthy, mature relationship, you should be able to talk about everything, right? You should be able to just talk about it, and then there's a conversation, and you're gonna be figuring this stuff out. But that's not actually how it happens, right? Everything the other person does, and the closer you get with them, and the more intimate it gets, and the more they know about you, the more, man, it even bothers you the way that they walk, or the way that they leave their shoes, or the way that they do this or do that, right? Because it's not mutually exclusive, right? It's not independent. All the variables affect each other and are there, and they're interdependent, okay? So here's the lesson. To be able to predict this, right? We cannot predict the outcome of something like that. Let's say outcome, so equals, because these things cannot be understood statistically. Things with interdependent units cannot be understood statistically at the individual level. Why? Because it's almost like, it's just like health. If you're trying to diagnose somebody's liver, right? You can't take the liver out, right, and kind of put it here and say, okay, let's see, okay, what is going on here, right? Well, that would not be good, obviously, taking the liver out. But what I'm saying is, even taking the liver out conceptually, because the liver, it exists not only at the level of organ, but it exists all the way down to the atomic level, right? The foundational level of the molecules, right? The molecules that make the amino acids, that make the proteins, that make the parts of the cells, that make the organelles, that makes the cells, that makes, the tissues, that makes the organs, that makes the system, right? Circulatory system, or the digestive system in this case of the liver, right? And all those levels of analysis exist simultaneously, and they affect each other, right? So being able to say, oh, okay, I know how this is going to go. I understand. Here are the possible things that can happen, let's say with the liver. Impossible. And it cannot be predicted, right? So what am I guess I'm a prophet of doom here. I'm saying, look, you can't figure this out. No, what I'm saying is it's not easy. And if you are tempted, so maybe here's the lesson. If you're tempted to come up with an easy solution, with an Occam's razor solution to something, you come up with something, you say, oh, obviously this is the thing, then you should be careful, because it's not that simple. I think, so what is it that I'm trying to think of how to solve this? And so here's what I've come up with. First, you need to give up the idea that there is a problem like a domino that if you just get rid of, everything will be fine. You gotta give that idea up, okay? Because in an interdependent system, like a relationship, like a company, like a team, like a machine less so, but humans certainly, anything that has to do with humans, anything has to do with a group of humans, even more so. Right? So when every time somebody tells me, Gabe, I have the secret marketing campaign for you, you gotta be doubtful. You gotta be doubtful, because these things at the social levels, they move unpredictably, right? If it was so easy to predict what video is gonna go viral, or what thing is gonna just spread out, that meme, that's I should probably do a video just on memes, right? And meme is not a funny picture that somebody put some caption on it. Meme rhymes with gene for a reason, and you should look it up. And if not, I will make a video about it. But it is impossible to predict, because if it was easy to predict, then why wouldn't that be the strategy to go to, right? Now the guys on the other side of the fence are going to tell you, let me sell you on this. Look, I got the technique, I got the tool that's gonna fix your problem, because this is it, because I'm going to provide you with a domino, right? But that doesn't exist, okay? And doesn't exist in business, doesn't exist in marketing, doesn't exist in macroeconomics or microeconomics, certainly doesn't exist in relationships, no freaking way, right, that it exists. And so here's the point, there's no privileged point of causation. There are catalysts, but it's not something that, again, you cannot blame the last truck crossing the bridge for the bridge falling down. You gotta blame the engineers, and then maybe the engineers. Then you have to keep going down. Well, maybe it was the architects. Maybe it was the people who designed it. Maybe it was the people who destined the budget. Maybe they took some money that they shouldn't have taken, and so the concrete wasn't as strong. I don't know if you guys know this, but all these kind of public works work on estimates that are put out for all these people, and basically many times the lowest price wins, right? I was reading this article about the 737 Max, the Boeing 730, a couple planes that crashed, and it seems like they had some faulty software in it, and the headline read something like Boeing outsourced these thing to engineers that were getting paid $12.37 an hour, right? And I told that to John Paul, and he's like, wow, they got a raise. So anyways, but it's true. A lot of these things get put up to the lowest common denominator until they go. So anyway, so there's no privileged point of causation. Okay, the problem is the whole thing is the problem. Right? If a bridge falls down, if a 737 falls down, well, what is the problem? Oh, it's the software. No, it's not the software. Why would they not test this? Why would they not do that? And then you gotta keep drilling down. I'm not shorting Boeing stock or anything like that. So I'm just it's just an example. So that for me that's the first key. So should we give up in trying to figure the problem out? No. But I think this is where humility comes in. This is where we say, okay, well, I'm tempted to think that this is the thing, but maybe there are all these other things. Is there a way that we could test some of these things? Is there a way that we could cautiously is the word, start putting these things in place and kind of, okay, let's take the light bulb over here, let's stick it over here, and let's just see what it does. And yes, humbly, right? And this is the reality of life. Then this is the reality of business. I was reading somebody was posting a thing that said one out of 20 ideas are successful. So if you're an entrepreneur, don't give up on all this stuff. And I said 1 out of 20, so that's a 5% success rate, which is huge in business. We must realize, and again, this is a little too much truth to most people. We must realize that most things fail. And when we say most, I don't mean 95%. I don't even mean 99%. But I'm thinking that's about the ratio. So most, I have a coaching client that I've been helping them trying to get a better opportunity and stuff like that. And it's tough, man, when you're working so hard on your CV, you're working very hard on reaching out to companies because you want an interview, because you want this, because you want that, and I told him, look, you gotta know that this has 98, 99, sometimes even 99.9% of denial rate, and you gotta get used to it. So if you send, and this is actually very useful information, if you know what you're looking at, and this is not about being negative, this is not about being a naysayer. I've been kicked out of a lot of groups and being called a naysayer many times.
But again, my job many times is for my clients not to bleed out. How can we stop this? And let's not be naive. There's no reason to be naive. You don't get on an airplane with no parachute, saying, oh, let's think positive about this, and I'm gonna try to jump and I'll be okay. It's not, right? There's hope and there's faith and there's all those kinds of things, you can. I'm not saying don't fight for your dreams. I'm not saying do any of that, but realize that the odds of figuring out the issues, of figuring out the problem, are slim. So before you reduce things down to, I'll give you an example. Before you say, look, I know what the problem is, and see if I just find a better employee, then everything will be fine. Okay, well, maybe that's the problem, but maybe it's not. And if you reduce it down to that, you might have the benefit that, right away you feel better because you figured out the problem. You can't fix it because, you can't fire whoever because, they've been with you for a long time, and what are they going to say, and what are they going to do, and all that, and then people just get stuck. But, at least in their heads, they solve the problem. But many times, I find that the problem is actually not the problem. And like we said, it's important to say, instead of what is the problem, what are the problems, and how do they interact? And then once you get there, then you could start to say, okay, let me break this part, let me do this, let me do that, and then find a way to win. I think this is what I have so far. Just to give you guys an update, like I said, my book is about to come out in a couple of weeks. We're going to be in Las Vegas in an event called Freedom Fest. And it's a convention of a bunch of people who are very pro free market, and Steve Forbes are just going to be there, and a bunch of other people. Will Ferrell, who wrote, it's right here, and I had a post about this just this week. The Boy Crisis, Warren Ferrell. I think Will Ferrell is a comedian, right? So Warren is going to be there, and yeah, a few more people. The guy Kevin from Shark Tank is going to be there. Anyway, so that's what we're going to be releasing. The book. I'm very excited about this new chapter, and I'm gonna make some more of these because I'm gonna talk about the spectrum concept here. We'll talk about it next time, I think. But for now, when you're solving problems, when you are trying to figure out what is the deal, you might be tempted to say, it is this. Or you might be tempted to say, it is that. But I say to you, it is this and that all together. And the relationships and the interdependent exchanges between this and that might be the problem.